Alright, this should be a fairly interesting video for a lot of people. Due to the nature of this video, there's going to be a hell of a lot of jump cuts, and they're going to come pretty much randomly, but it's just how it's going to be. Alright, so what you're looking at is the stack of the more classic XRGB upscan converters. We've got the 1, the 2, and the 2 Plus. There is, of course, also the 3 and the recent released FrameMeister. This video is specifically about people interested in using one of these with a supergun, control box, JAMA rig, whatever the hell you want to call it. I'm really not going to get into console usage. If you only want to use an upscan converter for playing console games, you're probably better off with the XRGB 3 or the new released FrameMeister, depending on what you want. If you want to use HDMI, you'd want the FrameMeister. If you want more standard VGA, you'd want the XRGB 3. But either way, for consoles, those are those units. This is specifically for arcade. Now, as you notice, I have all 3 of these. And the main reason for this is because I keep going back and forth between, you know, what I want to use to upscan my arcade games. They've all got some nice features the others don't, and they all lack something. Unfortunately, none of these by themselves makes a satisfactory product for your arcade games. For a long time, you know, I liked the 1, but all the little cables, sometimes if you just want a clean little setup, it's got issues. So, it always comes back to the 2 or the 2 Plus for me. To be honest, I really don't like the 3, just because it's got so many fucking buttons and you're like, blah, blah, blah. Meaning the 2 Plus and the 3 do have a remote, probably because people whine about the 2, or you're constantly hitting these damn buttons and there's no remote. But overall, though, it kind of came back to the 2 versus the 2 Plus. As I'll show you in a minute when I start showing some tests, these both have good points and bad points. I mean, the 2 Plus has more scanline options, and it actually can show games the full screen. The 2 is way the hell more compatible, but a lot of games you can't see full screen. Meaning, I would go back and forth. Depending on what arcade game I wanted to use, I would switch between the 2 or the 2 Plus. And as a combination, it works pretty well, but it's still an annoyance, you know? You can't just have one. You know, all the times you're sitting there, you're swapping cables back and forth, and you're just like, damn it, can't someone just make one simple box that just does everything I need for arcade games? The perfect arcade game upscan converter that I can just plug shit into, and it works. Well, guess what? It does fucking exist. In fact, it was made by the same fucking company. You've just never heard of it. Here it is, the Micomsoft Dispel. Yeah, you're probably wondering, what the fuck is this thing? I'd never heard of it either. In fact, no one's heard of this thing. This has got to be one of their rarest, most obscure-ass pieces of hardware they've ever made. I only have it loose. I actually found this on Yahoo Japan auctions for 1,500 yen, which is less than $20. No one bid on it besides me, and I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck this is, but I'm gonna pick it up just because it's cheap and give it a try. And this thing is the answer. This is basically the best parts of these in one little box. This thing is fucking awesome. As I said, it's obscure as fucking hell, and I think one of the reasons for that is the name, because, you know, most people know the name XRGB, so they work backwards, like, oh, people have the XRGB 3, well, that means there's a 2 and a 1. Oh, and there's a 2 Plus. But this thing is just called the Dispel. I actually had a Japanese friend that first thought this was some kind of Chinese knockoff or something, but no, this is a real product. If you actually go to Micomsoft webpage and you look at their, if you look very hard, they've got a listing where they basically show all their hardware, and basically they say, you know, it's the we no longer support these models list, and this is on there. So yes, this is in fact the real thing. They made this. And another reason this has probably dropped off the face of the world is because later they made another unit called the Dispel TV, which I actually did do a short video on before. And the Dispel TV is mainly used to upscale standard TV frequencies. It's a nice little unit actually because it takes RF, so if you need to upscan like a Pong machine, you can do it. But the Dispel TV does not take RGB at all, meaning it doesn't have one of these, and for that reason, anyone that ever did actually hear about this unit probably assumed that it couldn't take RGB. Well, here's the truth. This thing only takes RGB. If you notice, we've got the game input, which is your RGB, and that's it. This does not take composite. This does not take S-video. It is a pure 15 kilohertz RGB in, 31 kilohertz VGA output. That's all it does. Which, that alone, for me, is awesome. Which, again, you know, for console games, you might want to have S-video, but honestly, the S-video upscanning on these models doesn't really look that good. Anyone that uses an XRGB will tell you use the fucking RGB. That's the whole purpose of the unit. So yeah, and especially if you're using arcade games, you're going to be using the RGB anyway. So yeah, you plug in your RGB, and as you can see, it's got, you know, everything is controlled by dials. This doesn't have a menu. This was actually released between the XRGB 1 and the XRGB 2. In fact, if you look, you know, it's the same case as the 1. The exact same case. In fact, these holes don't even do anything on the Dispel. On the 1, they're hue and brightness, but... or no, color and hue. Yeah, color and hue. But on the Dispel, they're just empty holes, because they just use the same case. So first, right off the bat, things I love about this unit is you've got your red, green, and blue adjustments, and your brightness right on the fucking front. And now, unlike the XRGB 1, where they're on the back, and they're the more screw dials that, you know, you really have to kind of turn. On this thing, they're very, very smooth little dials on the front. So if you're gonna put this in like an entertainment center, it fits in easily, and you've got your colors and your brightness right on the front. So you don't have to pull it out, you don't have to mess with the back, you don't have to fuck around with menus, which it's just right there and it works. It's simple. That's how it should be. Like just like that. On the back, you'll notice we've got the typical PC pass-through, which very few people would ever bother using, but yeah, it's there. And then display out, it's got both the old Japanese style and the more standard VGA. Like all of the Micomsoft units that have dual display out, you don't want to use both at once. The system really isn't designed for that. You're supposed to just use one or the other. But yeah, you get your choice. And then of course it's got, you know, line in, line out for audio. And what the fuck is this here? Vertical line, high, low. Yeah, this fucking thing actually has scan lines. Most people say the XRGB2 was the first unit to have fake scan lines. That is false. This did it first. I don't know the exact date when this was released because there's almost, like literally, I searched the internet for hours with my native Japanese buddy. We found like one blog post and then we no longer support this on Micomsoft's web page. And all the blog post was said that if you can't watch PS2 DVDs on this thing because it's RGB only. And that's like the entire information on the internet for this thing. That's it. There's nothing else anywhere. So yeah, this right here is the original model to actually have fake scan lines. And as you'll notice, it's controlled by a dip switch. And you'll also notice it's high or low. Yeah, this actually has two settings, but the trick is you can't turn them off. When you use this thing, you have fake scan lines 100% of the time. They can't be disabled. But you can adjust them between high or low, which really means thin or thick. The thicker setting is pretty much identical to the scan lines on the XRGB2, or the 100% setting on the 2 Plus, meaning they're big, thick, and black, which is how I like them. Or you can put them on the lighter setting, and then they're a lot thinner, but it really ends up to what kind of monitor you're using and how big like your screen is, and you know, it also depends on the game, but still, you actually get a choice here. The XRGB2, which came later, you could turn them on or off, and that's it. Here, you actually get a choice of light or heavy. Now, again, you can't turn them off, but one of the things I like about these units is the fact that you can have the scan lines, so I personally would never turn them off myself. I always use them. So, for that, it's quite nice. I mean, you know, it's a little tiny dip switch, but it's not the kind of thing that you'd probably ever adjust. You'd pick the one you like and keep with it. But yeah, so unlike the one, see, this actually has the scan lines, which is kind of weird, because the one has other features like it can output in 15 or 31 kilohertz, You can adjust the out port to be used on like an FM Towns monitor, and this doesn't have any of that. This is just standard VGA out and 31 kilohertz. But you've got the scan lines. So yeah, unlike this thing which needs the SLG 3000, or that thing where it's just one or the other, here you have more options and it's older. Like, what the fuck? This thing confuses the hell out of me. Alright, and then of course we have the PS NTSC dot clock. Starting with the XRGB2, you can adjust the dot clock, which I'm not going to get into the techniques behind that because I don't remember directly offhand, but basically there's the standard NTSC setting, and then on the 2 you could do a custom setting, and there's like, I don't know, 100 of these, to get a slightly clearer picture on some things. This, you'll notice, is NTSC, it's just a switch, and it's NTSC or PS. PS actually stands for PlayStation. It's a custom setting, so that if you're using an old PlayStation 1, you should switch it to that, and then you're supposed to get a slightly clearer picture. I haven't been able to test this because I don't have an original PlayStation 1 anymore, and I really don't feel like buying one anymore because it's just a piece of junk I don't really need anymore. But either way, this does actually have a custom setting for the PlayStation. Again, you can, on the 2 and the 2 Plus, you can adjust the dot clock however you want, but you have to do it completely manually, place by place. It's actually kind of nice having just already a preset setting that you can just switch to. But yeah, it actually is a PlayStation mode, which makes me wonder if this device was basically sold. I mean, you know, it's the same color as the PlayStation. Maybe it was like, yo, you got that PlayStation? Get one of these fucking things. But yeah, that's really all the unit has. But now it's time to hook up an arcade board and show you why this thing is the king. This is the all-in-one RGB upscan converter for arcade boards that I've always dreamed about. Like, it amazes me this thing even exists. XC15 Dispel. Like, I was actually I picked this up and just thought it would be some cheap little thing to mess around with, but this is my dream come true. This, fuck this. If you want to upscan arcade PCBs on a super gun, this is what you want. Alright, now I'm going to hook up a PCB and I'm going to show you some tests, and you'll see exactly why this is the true king. Okay, we're back. So, let's do some basic tests and show you what I mean. So first we've got R-Type out, one of my old-time favorites, and we're going to start up with the XRGB2. So let's just flick on the unit, and flick it on. And what the hell? Hold on. Sorry about that. When I had hooked this up, I actually turned down the brightness on this so low that I couldn't see it on the monitor. For a minute I was like, did my R-Type board just die? Oh fuck no. No, it's fine. Yeah, it was just the brightness on this. I forgot this was here, and you know, so I couldn't actually see it. But yeah, so here we've got R-Type hooked up to the XRGB2, and you know, you got nice scan lines, which I don't think, yeah, you can, I don't know if you'll be able to see those or not, but, and it looks good, except for one problem, which, well, does the screen look a little odd to you? If you're familiar with this game, it will. Yeah, I noticed something's missing here. The status bar, right? It's gone. You can't see it. So you might be wondering, where the fuck is it? Some people think, oh, it's an overscan issue. No, it isn't. Now, I don't know the technical term for this, or whatever, but the status bar in R-Type, as well as a lot of all the other games that use the IR M72, like Gallop, it's like out of the normal range of RGB, or I don't know, whatever again, I haven't bothered to look up the technical term, but like you can move the picture up all you want. You can move the picture up using the settings on the XRGB2. You will not see that status screen. No matter what the hell you do, you will never see it. It is impossible. And this seems to be kind of a flaw of some old RGB setups. Like even on my Sharp monitor here, on some games, if I run it in 15 kilohertz, even like actual X68000 games, there'll be part of the screen missing. And this right here is the big flaw with the XRGB2. Not just IRM games. Every once in a while, you'll see a forum post about a person playing some kind of PCB with this game, and they ask, how do I see the full screen? Part of it's cut off. On a vertical game, it might be part of the side. Well, the sad news is you can't. This is the major flaw of the XRGB2. This will not affect all games, but I've got a lot of IRM boards and it affects all of them. So typically, traditionally, if I was going to play R-Type on an XRGB, I'd use the 2 Plus. Why? Let me switch to the 2 Plus and I'll show you. Okay, now we've got R-Type hooked up to the 2 Plus. Switch her on. Putting up. Notice we can see this now. And there's our status bar at the bottom of the screen. Currently it's a little overscanned, but this is something that you can adjust with the 2 Plus's options. So you're probably wondering, well, okay, why is this here and not on the 2? That's because, as I said, the 2 has that flaw. And I'm pretty sure Micomsoft realized they fucked this up when they made the 2 Plus. Because how this works on the 2 Plus is if you go to the menu, which I hate using these stupid menus, and you scroll all the way down. Where is that? AD lock. It's one of those options. It's actually like, yeah, there it is, mask. See, if I turn the mask on, it disappears. If I turn it off, it's there. See, again, I don't know exactly what the technical term for this is, but on the 2, it's basically locked on, and they realized they fucked this up. So in the 2 Plus, you can disable this, and then you'll actually get the full screen. And then, if you adjust the screen size and the overscan, you get a nice picture, and you can actually see the whole fucking game. So for this reason, whenever I was playing any of my IRM M72 boards, I would use the 2 Plus over the 2, because the 2 Plus, I can actually see the whole frickin' screen. But, so then you're probably wondering, how about this little baby? This weird little thing. Well, let's hook it up and take a look. Okay, now R-Type is hooked up to the Dispel. Let's turn on the game. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but the picture is actually quite a bit brighter on this thing. I mean, it has a brightness setting, but I've tried to keep it all at like the default settings. Like this can actually get way the hell brighter. It's on like 50% right now, and this is how the game should look in my mind. So, and there we go, status bar, fucking perfect. And also you'll notice here, the screen is like perfectly sized. When I had, the 2 Plus hooked on, the 2 hooked on, I had them set to default settings. The Dispel, you don't really get any, like you can't adjust picture size, you can't move it around like you can in the later units. And of course if you have to, you can always do that on the monitor. But this is 100% default settings right now. This is just plugged in, turned on, that's all. And the monitor, I actually use the digital controls on the monitor to reset it to, it's also defaults. But the picture is fucking perfect. It is 100% centered. Everything is the right size. The status bar is the right size. Like, all you do is you plug the cable in, you turn the damn fucking thing on, and there you go. And yes, again, I don't know if you can actually see this so well, maybe in the text, but yeah. Notice the scan lines. This is older, and I've got it on the heavier scan lines because that's personally what I prefer. So there is a lighter setting if you prefer lighter scanning lines. Again, you can't turn them off, but the picture's fucking perfect. It is absolutely centered. It is exactly how it's supposed to look. This is beautiful. And again, it's so simple. You just plug the fucking thing in, turn it on. And now if you want to just brightness or colors, you can do that. And this thing is so small, it fits into any angle, and you can just flick them around. You don't need the back. You don't have to bring up a fucking menu. You don't need to use a remote control. You actually get the full screen 100% of the time. And it's fucking perfect. But we're not done yet. So, now looking at this, you might think, well, the 2 Plus can do it and still has more features. So let's go on to test number 2, compatibility. Be back in a bit. Alright, we're back. Next PCB, what else? Konami's XRGB. For those of you not familiar with it, this is one of the bitchiest, most pain in the ass boards there exists as far as video goes. If you're using an actual arcade monitor, you won't have any issues, but I don't remember the exact frequencies, but needless to say, just about every TV hates this game. As I said, even if I plug the RGB directly into my Sony TV, the picture will just roll like forever. If I use like the S-Video and hook it up to my old Panasonic, it actually gets a stable picture, but it's like this far down, so I actually have to go into like the serviceman mode and raise it up. But then of course if I want to play anything else, I gotta go back and do it again. But this game has a reputation for being a pain in the ass, and I've actually met people that have bought this board, given up at getting a monitor that actually displays it properly, and end up selling it off in disappointment. So we're going to start with it hooked up back to the XRGB 2. So let's just flick it on. And as you'll notice already, we've got picture. It's a little off center, which you can adjust. Again, I've got this running on default settings, same with the monitor itself. But as you can see, XRGB loads up, and it's slightly off center, but again, that can be adjusted easily enough using the monitor and the XRGB2 controls. But there we have XRGB, nice and stable, looks beautiful, beautiful game. This is a game when you're running it on the 2, you really need to have the little PCB switch to PCB, because otherwise it's blindingly bright. But as you can see, the XRGB2 has no problem with XRGB. Just got to adjust your monitor a little bit, and it's all you can ask for. Alright, now let's switch back to our 2 Plus, shall we? Alright, we've now got XRGB plugged up to the XRGB2 Plus, and oh man, I'm already getting tired of switching all these damn cables around. Hope this video is useful for some person out there. Alright, so let's give XRGB a try. Flick it on and okay. No signal. The monitor's detecting no signal out of 2 Plus. All the lights are on. Sound works, but as you'll notice, we have no video. This is the big fault with the 2 Plus, and this was actually continued. I believe the 3 fixed some of the issues, but the FrameMeister actually also has these issues, I believe, from what I've heard so far. Yeah, the 2 Plus simply is not compatible with XRGB. It won't take it. XRGB is one of these screwy-ass bitchy boards that uses weird-ass refresh rates or sync rates or whatever the hell it is, and the 2 Plus is simply not compatible. No, the monitor's gone in standby. There's nothing. You cannot. It simply will not work with this game, and there's lots of other PCBs that also have a similar issue. So this is the reason that traditionally the XRGB2 has been seen as the best overall unit for PCBs because it has the best compatibility and it had scan lines. The original XRGB one will play this just fine. It also has nice compatibility, but it has no scan lines unless you add all those extra shit as a standalone unit. So this was, for a long time, I basically used the 2, before I had a cab anyway, I used the 2 and the 2 Plus, depending on what game I was going to play. Because if I wanted to play like ZexX, I had to use the 2. But if I wanted to play R-Type and see the whole fucking screen, I needed to use the 2 Plus. So I was constantly switching back and forth, which worked, but wasn't really what I wanted, and truth be told, I was a bit disappointed in the units. So, you probably already can guess the output, but let's hook this up to the Dispel for one last test. Alright, got the Dispel hooked back up again. Flick it on. Turn on the game. Monitor turns on. And there we go. As you could probably imagine, ZexX works just fine. And notice something. Notice how that screen is. It's not perfectly centered, but it's better than on the 2. Like, I don't really need to adjust it here. I drop a credit in. Notice when I was playing on the 2, the screen was off to the left and I had to move it around. Picture's a little too bright actually. This doesn't have that little switch, so just lower the brightness on the super gun a little bit, and there we go. Perfect image. And notice I get the full screen again. But note it, and look, as I said, it's not off the right. When I was using the normal XRGB2, it was shifted to the left. Now I can adjust that using the monitor, but with this fucking thing, I don't have to do that. I can just leave the monitor on the normal settings like I like it, and the picture is fucking perfect. It is the entire... That just blows my mind. Not only is this 100% has all the great compatibility of the older units, plus it has, you know, the fake scan lines, and not just one but 2 settings, but also it can actually display the whole screen. This thing is incredible. They made, you know, so many XRGB units, and none of them could compare to this weird ass Dispel. I mean, look at this. This looks fucking beautiful. It's, again, I mean, you know, I got a little more space there than here, but I don't care because I can see the whole damn fucking screen. Now, again, I'm using, you know, an old professional CRT VGA monitor. I do not own an LCD display other than the one on my laptop, which doesn't even work anymore. It's burnt out and I have to use this now. So, as far as, you know, compatibility with like an LCD TV, plasma, or whatever, if you want to use something big, gigantic, that I have no experience with. But just using a good old quality CRT VGA monitor, this fucking thing wins in all categories. It has more scan lines than the XRGB2. It has the full compatibility of the XRGB2. You can actually see the full fucking screen in every single game, like on the XRGB2 Plus, and it plays all the games the XRGB2 Plus won't. And again, you know, on the 2, when I'm playing this game, I have to flick the little switch on the front to PCB mode. This, I don't even have to do that. I mean, I've got the brightness on my super gun just slightly below the highest setting, but even if I didn't have that, I could just, you know, slightly lower it here, and it would work perfectly. This fucking thing blows my mind, that this amazing little box has just disappeared, like, out of history. Other than that one little obscure-ass blog post in Japanese, and the "we no longer support this" on Micomsoft's own webpage, this is it. This is what I've been searching for. That I'd given up all hope that such a box existed. But it does exist. I own it. It cost me less than $20 on freaking Yahoo. And it's better than I could have asked for. I mean, again, I get the full fucking screen. I get, extremely high compatibility with even the craziest arcade games. And not only do I get the full screen, I don't even have to adjust the fucking thing. I can actually see it perfectly, like 100%. It's fucking beautiful. I don't have to fuck around with the settings on my monitor. I don't have to fuck around with the menu or with the crappy little remote control the 2 Plus has. You know, I can turn these if I really need to, but I don't even have to in this case. This thing blows my mind that Micomsoft could make such an awesome little upscan converter for arcade use after remember, this came after the XRGB 1. So basically, they made the XRGB 1, then they made this thing, which had scan lines, before the 2 did, and yet they called it something different, so everybody forgot this thing existed. And not only does it exist, it's fucking awesome! There's no contest. I mean, sure, it doesn't have S-Video or composite, but who the fuck wants that anyway? Like, if you're like me, and you just want to have one tiny, simple box that does it all, where you don't have to fuck around with settings, you just plug the fucking thing in, turn it on, and it works, this is it! The Micomsoft Dispel. The code number is XC15. Like, this blows my... Seriously, this hurts my brain that this exists. Why the fuck? Why isn't this the XRGB2? Or at least the XRGB 1.5? And why does it have 2 scanline settings when the actual XRGB2, which came later, only has 1? What the fuck? Like, I only have a loose unit. I wish I had a boxed unit, because then I might get a bit more information, because I don't even know when exactly this was released. Again, judging by the actual code numbers on the labels, I know it came after the 1 and before the 2 did. But, God! I mean, I don't want to keep rambling like this, but this thing just blows my mind. This is it. This is the holy grail. If you're gonna play arcade PCBs at home, and you don't have the space for, you know, an arcade cab, and you don't want to fuck around with 20 million little boxes and wires and adapter cables, just get one of these fucking things, plug whatever the fuck you want into it, and it works every fucking time. Perfect picture, perfectly centered. Okay, again, off a few pixels, but who the fuck cares about that? Get the whole fucking screen, and you even get the fake scan lines. And 2 settings of scan lines. Like, fuck, man! Like, I'm not drunk right now, but I wish I was, because this really... Every time I use this little thing, it just blows my mind. How the fuck could something so awesome, so feature-rich, but yet so simple, exist for so long and be totally forgotten by everyone? I mean, I'm guessing the name is because it's called the Dispel, and the only other thing called that is the Dispel TV, which, you know, doesn't even take RGB, and came years later. But, I mean, obviously this came out during the PlayStation 1 years, because it's got a special setting just for that system. Just, fuck! Like, I'm not acting here. I mean, everybody knows I don't act, I don't write scripts, I just say whatever shit comes in my head, but this is just... This fucking thing is just blown my mind completely. This is beautiful. This is everything I ever wanted. It's an entire stack. It's the 2. It's like the 1, the 2, and the 2 Plus combined into one compact unit, but it functions better than any of them do. And I don't need to stick extra shit on it. Like, I like the 1 so much, but the 1 you needed all those adapter cables, and you needed the SLG if you wanted the scan lines, but with this fucking thing, I don't need to do that anymore. And, you know, the only settings you would ever possibly need to adjust, again, are right on the fucking front. So I could fit this in a little tiny cubby, and neatly and tidily, and it'll just fucking work. It just fucking works. And just look at those scan lines, they're beautiful. The picture is stable as hell. Where have you been all my life? Where have you been all our lives? Why are you so fucking obscure? Okay, I'm gonna attempt to shut up now and stop recording, but as you can see, fuck the XRGB 1, fuck the XRGB 2, fuck the XRGB 2 Plus, fuck the XRGB 3 with its 20 fucking million buttons, and fuck the FrameMeister, which I'm pretty sure won't even play this game. I don't have one. I don't even have an HDMI display. But from what I've heard, from the few reviews out there, it most likely won't. Just, again, if you're a console gamer, one of the newer ones like the FrameMeister might be more what you're after. But if you like playing the arcade games, if that's what you want an upscan converter for, to hook up to your Supergun, get this fucking thing. Again, good luck finding one. I just found it completely random. Basically, I was bored one day, so I went on Yahoo Auctions and typed in Micomsoft in English, and this is what came up. Oh, fuck. I'm gonna play some Zexix now and shut up and try to let my mind unwind, because this amazing little box just, it gets me every time. But this is it. This is the king. You want an upscan converter for your arcade games? This is it. And alright, really, I'm gonna shut up. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm feeling a lot of people are gonna want some of these. So happy hunting, because they're fucking about as obscure as it gets. Good night.